Hopefully you took some time to try to repeat the process for creating the variables and populating them with content and then passing that content to the HTML using some PHP as well. But here's the solution. So if you needed to do that, you create your keyword meta, and it should look a lot like the description meta. So you could have even probably copy pasted this and just changed name equals description to name equals keywords. And then you move the keywords that we created into a variable that is contained within the page where you're going to put it. So that's really important. All these variables are going to appear on the page that we're going to be using them. That's what allows us to give those unique values. And then the constant within that is the way that we're calling those values. So we always want the content of the keyword meta to be the keywords variable, right? And we always want the content of the description meta to be the description variable. We always want the content of the title element to be the title variable. So hopefully this is starting to make sense. I realize it's kind of a technical process, but it's pretty straightforward if you can stop long enough to understand what you're doing. So the next thing we need to do is upfit our style guide page to match this. So let's open up styleguide.html, and this time I'm going to do a save as, and I'm going to change styleguide.html to styleguide.php and save it in my GRD 188 folder. Again, every semester I have some students who start putting full pages inside the includes folder. Keep in mind, all of our pages need to be at the same level of the folder to keep from complicating this file setup and to keep from complicating these relative paths and relationships. So make sure all your pages are going in your GRD 188 folder, and make sure your pieces of code are going in your includes folder. At this point, we're actually done putting things in the includes folder for this class. All we really need is the code for the header and the code for the footer. So everything else goes in this page, okay, or in this part of the folder, in the GRD 188 folder, and we want to make sure we're using that PHP extension. But this is basically going to be review. We're going to do the same thing we just did with the template for Style Guide, except that we don't have to recreate these includes. We're going to use the same include files for every page. So head code is done, right? We can even close it. Foot code is done. We can close it. The template is also done, but we need it as a reference for the Style Guide. So what we did before was we took everything from line 1 all the way down to where the main element opens and the div with a class of row is its first child. Right? We took all of that code. For me, that's around line 57. And we replaced it, so I can now hit delete. We replaced it with this little bit of PHP in this include statement. So what I can do now is write a comment that says everything above this line is in the head code file. I can comment it out, and then I can open up a PHP statement, make sure that I remember to close it as well, and then I can use an include statement that brings in the head code. Here's the thing though, I could actually just copy all of this and modify it. So that's what I'm going to do instead of trying to retype everything out. I'm going to take my whole PHP statement here, even though I just typed it here, and I'm just going to paste over the opening and closing PHP tags that I used. But now I need to make sure that this is different. Each of these values is different from what I had on the template. These should actually describe the style guide, right? And so our title should be pretty easy, right? It should at the very least just be website style guide. And then I already had a pretty good description for the style guide page. So I'm going to go back to my HTML copy of it, just long enough to copy this. And then I'm going to come back to my PHP version, and I'm just going to replace the contents of the description variable with the sentence that I already wrote about what the style guide is. And now I also need to put in some keywords that describe a style guide too. So if I was looking for a reference for a website style guide online, I would probably go to Google and type in website style guide. Alternatively, I might just type in style guide. It wouldn't be the best, but I probably would. I might type in design portfolio style guide. And I might even type in website style reference, right? Something like that. And remember, somewhere around 5 or up to 5 is good. So really 3 to 5. So in this case, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and I feel pretty good with those 4. So I'm going to leave them like that. And then, never a bad idea to stop and check our work. So let's come back to the browser. Oops. Let's come back to the browser real quick. And let's visit our style guide page. So I'm going to reload this and come to my style guide page. Oh, this I need to fix though, right? Because this is actually leading to the HTML style guide. So hang on, we'll use that as an example in just a minute. So I'm just going to back up to my directory so I can find styleguide.php. And the way that I know that my PHP is working is that I have a navigation bar and I have a footer. Remember, those are in separate files that are being included. And I also have a title for my page. And if I look at the source code for the style guide, I can see that my description is coming in as well as my keywords. So all of my PHP is working. Let's say it wasn't, just as to give you a quick reminder, because in a previous exercise I taught you how to turn on error reporting for PHP, which works kind of like the HTML validator, but for PHP. So let's go back and break something on purpose. Let me come to my style guide PHP page here, and let's say that I forgot one of these semicolons. Okay, when I come back to my browser and I reload this page, it's probably going to break. Yeah. But see, with error reporting on, it gives me, I mean, granted this message is kind of cryptic, but it does give me a hint at least as to what's going on. If I didn't have error reporting turned on, I would just get a blank screen. And so this is better than a blank screen, right? And what it's telling me is that it has an unexpected keys, which is a variable, in styleguide.php on line 7. So that's fairly helpful, right? If I come back to Sublime Text, I can see that what it's saying is it didn't expect this yet. And usually with the HTML validator, the CSS validator, and these messages for PHP, a lot of times the error is not actually to do with the thing that it calls out. It's something just before it. And so in this case, it's saying it wasn't expecting that because we had not completed this thought, basically. We hadn't completed this statement. And so once I add my semicolon back and save, when I come back, I should reload and I should see my page come back. So if you end up seeing a blank screen, that means that your error reporting is not properly turned on. And if you see a really cryptic little line of code saying that it unexpected this or that, then that's just trying to tell you what's wrong with your PHP so that you can fix it. Okay, so now we've got our header back, right, for our style guide. All of our variables are working. So now we need to get that footer out of there so that we can use the footer include instead. So let's scroll down. And if you remember, we needed to get not only where the main element closes, but since we opened this div for the row in the head code, we may as well close it in the foot code. So I'm going to grab all of this all the way down and delete it. I don't need it anymore. I'm not going to create a new include. I'm going to use the same 2 include files for every single page. That's the whole point. Okay, so I'm not going to create a new one. I'm just going to delete the code in style guide. And then I can come to my template.php and I can actually just copy this comment about everything above this line or everything below this line, as well as the whole PHP statement. And I can actually just paste that into my style guide. And I don't have to change anything for that. I'm going to pull this comment back a little so it stands out in my HTML as well. See, I don't have to change anything to this. I need exactly the same thing. So if I save that then the way that I'm going to know that it's working is when I come back to my browser and I refresh my page, I should still have a footer on my style guide page. So hopefully this is starting to make sense. Now, so here's the other problem though. If you remember, that link in the footer here leads to styleguide.html, and we need to get rid of that page now because we're not going to use HTML anymore. How I know that is when I hover over it. If you look over here in my browser, when I hover over it, I'm shown the path and I can see that it's leading to styleguide.html. So here's where we're going to do a couple of things that are kind of radical that might feel a little bit scary, but I want you to do them anyway because I want you to remember that you have backups of these elsewhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to come to template.html and we're going to delete it. And we're going to come to styleguide.html and we're going to delete it. So now all we have are our PHP files. Now when I come back to the browser and I reload, if I try to go to this link from either style guide or template, it's going to break because that page doesn't exist, right? So I need to update the path within my navigation bar so that it works. So this is where we start to see the benefit of having includes. So if we've set up all of our pages using PHP, and ideally we've used our template and made sure our template is 100% correct. So we would want to validate this on our hosting space before we use this to create additional pages. But ideally we've used the same template to make all of the pages rather than what we just did by modifying the style guide. If we do that, then when we need to change a link in our footer, then all we have to do, instead of changing it in the HTML for this page and this page, I can just go to foot code, I can find that link, and I can change it once. And it's going to work on every page where this code is being placed. So all I had to do was change the extension from .html to .php. And now when I come back, I can see when I hover over this link that now it's leading to styleguide.php. And when I come back to my template page, I can see that this one is also leading to styleguide.php. So now that link has been updated for both pages, and I don't have to worry about the possibility of updating it one place and forgetting to do it in all of the others. So hopefully this is starting to make sense. What we're going to do from here is we are going to put our work on our hosting space. So we're going to come back here. And I've got some stuff on here that I don't need anymore either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I get rid of my template.php, template.html, and styleguide.html on my hosting space. You shouldn't have a template.txt, by the way. I have that as boilerplate for the class, but you don't need that. So I'm going to hit delete. And now what I need to do is copy over everything I don't have or everything that I've modified. In this case, I have not changed my CSS, so it should be fine. But I do need to bring over my includes folder. So I need to refresh over here. I did that by right-clicking in the white space, by the way, and then choosing refresh. And now when I drag this over, I need the includes folder. I want to make sure that I do not drag it over top of a folder, because what that's going to do is make a copy of this includes folder inside some other folder where it doesn't belong. So I need to aim for the white space. And if I don't have white space, I at least need to hover over files and not folders. Okay. I'm going to aim for white space, copy over my includes folder, and then I'm going to grab my style guide and template.php files. And again, I'm going to aim for white space. And if I don't have white space, I'm going to aim for files and not folders because I don't want to make copies inside my folders. And copy that over. And now that I'm done working locally, I can come back to my public version here and I can see how things are looking. So I can come back to template.php here now. And what I want to do is just make sure that, I've got a page title and that I've got a description, I've got keywords, right? And then I've got all the code for the footer. I can see that the footer is correct, right? It's using styleguide.php. So what I want to do now is come to this template. And the template's the most important one to have correct because this is what I use as the baseline for every other page. And I am going to validate my HTML. So you notice I'm still getting some warnings about this text where I'm trying to write the word resume and it's saying that it doesn't recognize this. And again, that's a little bit advanced for us to hunt down for a beginning class. So I'm not going to make you fix that if you have warnings in there. The only warnings you really ought to fix is if it says something about the ending slash. And what that means is like in your meta tags, for example. Let's see, let's go to head code. So in your meta tags, you might have seen somewhere where meta tags were closing with a trailing slash. You don't need it anymore. That's what that trailing slash warning means. So anytime you have that on your meta tags or on an image tag, you just don't need it anymore, and that's all it's trying to tell you. But as long as your code validates, what I want you to do to submit this, now keep in mind, I cannot see PHP in the browser, right? It just prints as HTML. So we're up to this point, we've been able to turn in our sites and give me a link to the website. I need you to get your stuff on the website. I need you to get all your most current stuff on your actual hosting space. But then I need you to come to your GRD 188 folder, and I'm probably going to have to step out from here. I'll go to my documents folder and come find that GRD 188 folder. Yeah, right here. And what I need you to do is compress that into a zip folder. And then I need you to do me a favor. I need you to rename the zip folder with your name, or your first initial and last name, so I can at least tell them apart to that point. And I need you to submit this along with a link to your hosting space. Oh, sorry, I just realized this came up on a second screen so you couldn't see it. Okay, so my zip folder appeared right here. And I just renamed it from GRD188 to GRD188-lhughes.zip. You need to turn this zip folder in, so it's the entire 188 folder, just zipped up. You need to turn this in as well so that I can take a look at it and make sure that everything's working in your template before we use our template to make new pages. So this is the last phase of us getting ready to make this website. As soon as our template is cleared, you're going to be able to save that to make new pages and start working on your final project, which is going to be just to create all the pages and populate them with content. So we'll talk about that in the next exercise as well, but for now I want you to get to this point. Make sure that you push all of your files to your hosting space and give me a link to these files on your hosting space, but also turn in a zip file to the assignment so that I can take a look at your PHP and let you know how to fix any errors that you might have.